Good morning. Happy Monday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect. Okay. Great weekend. Busy Monday coming up. Let's dig straight into today's Q&A. This is with Manuel. Manuel had a question regarding an observation of watching people trying to lock weights out overhead and seeing the limitation in the ability to extend the elbow to straighten the arm. And so we talked through the reasoning as to why this may be, and then this sort of expanded into, okay, what about the shoulder orientation? What about elbow orientation? What about hand orientation? And then what sequence of events do we need to execute to recover relative motions under these circumstances? So this unpacks a lot of information in a very short period of time. So it's going to be useful for a lot of people that are having questions about these elbow orientations and then how to address them. So thank you, Manuel. Great question. If you'd like to participate in a 15-minute consultation, please go to askbillhartman@gmail.com, askbillhartman@gmail.com. Put 15-minute consultation in the subject line so I don't delete it. Please include your question in the email. We'll arrange that at our mutual convenience. Everybody have an outstanding Monday, and I'll see you tomorrow.
I can understand like the compensation in the forearm.
Yeah.
Do you ever, whenever you have that medial tricep really IRing that distal humerus, do you see the proximal humerus twist kind of in the way you would see like a varus the cowboy orientation in
Like
the femur?
Okay, so think about this, Manuel, especially as the loads increase. The amount of force I apply has to increase, which means I'm going to squeeze you more front to back. I'm going to stick you more in a middle representation, which means I'm going to be taking away your ER. So I have to orient harder into ER, which means I have to twist harder into IR. Same process as we were just talking about in lower extremity.
Yeah, because so what I'll see is, I do see a lot of hyperextension overhead in what I do, but
not shocked by that.
But
not shocked by that.
Right. But in really compressed individuals, what I'll see is it looks like they can't even they can't even straighten their arm. So like they'll go overhead and it looks like they're like this.
Okay.
And so what I'm wondering is that kind of like what we're talking about with that cowboy representation, where they had that hyperextension and then they had so much twist going on that they had to twist at the proximal humerus to then get that kind of orientation where it looks like they're not straightening their arm, but
they're not straightening their arm because they can't.
But when you ask them to straighten their arm, they're like, this is as far as it goes.
Right. Okay. So why does it stop?
Well, they don't have enough ER for the IR. But
yeah. So they ran out of spit. They literally, they have hit the threshold where they can no longer compensate into ER and produce an IR on top of it. So the motion literally stops. And it's like they'll be accused of being weak. Right? Oh, you're not strong enough to lock it out. It's like, well, okay, you're not strong enough to twist the bones harder to finish the lockout under these circumstances. Like that's literally like they are at the threshold of their current state or anatomy, or it's literally the end. They have actually hit the limit of their system's capabilities to create an orientation of ER and superimpose the IR on it.
Right. So I was wondering if that kind of orientation is like what we see at the leg, or
yes,
we
same
see that cowboy representation.
Same thing. Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely.
All right.
That's why you can't lock out, like, and it doesn't matter what exercise we're talking about where we would see like the elbow having to go from a bent position to a straight position. Doesn't matter. Like if you can't finish a bench press, it stops because you are out of room. Like you're squeezing as hard as you possibly can. You can't squeeze yourself anymore. There's no more orientation, ER to create a space to move into. There's no more IR that I can superimpose. It stops.
And then in terms of a strategy, how do we untwist humerus in that way?
Well, you got to get an axial skeleton that can recapture relative motions. I got to restore relative motion at the shoulder. I got to identify the hand position so I know what position the elbow's in, so I know which way to twist it.
Mm.
Right? Not as clean and simple as, oh, you just do this exercise.
Right.
Right? You have to understand what you're trying to recreate. Right? So the simple answer is I got to get my AP, right? So I have relative motions available at the shoulder, but then I got to understand where I came from. So if I'm oriented into ER, if I have a proximal bony orientation into ER, I have to IR that first. Otherwise, I don't have access to any elbow position or hand position.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can go after elbows and hands right away with the understanding that I got a shoulder that's probably going to kick them right back out into that same orientation. If I'm trying to control a symptom, so if somebody comes in with elbow pain, and we got to get, like, they can't do anything because the elbow is so uncomfortable, we might do something at the elbow that would alleviate a symptom that would allow us to do another activity proximal to distal first.
Mm-hmm.
So from a strategy standpoint, right? But
Yeah, because I feel like
it's a matter of selecting the activities that would reduce the concentric orientation that got you into that position in the first place.
right. I feel like so I understand that. I feel like when I, like half kneeling, I think is pretty effective at addressing the twist at the
Sometimes, yeah.
knee and hip, and then we can go from there.
Uh-huh.
I feel like when I'm working overhead, I don't have a position, an equivalent position that I can think of. Like
There is.
I can do stuff for AP expansion. I feel like I'm doing it in pieces rather than like
You are in many cases you are. It's like
I guess what I'm looking for is what would I'm
you want a
looking
big
for,
bang or something, like
yeah, I'm looking for
everything all at once.
I'm looking for a home run. I want to be super good.
You want to walk in and go, I have one exercise that you need to do and we'll be ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah, some half kneeling elbow movement or
So
whatever.
okay, but so think about what they're trying to do. So they're going to end up trying to produce force in an ER position. So you're going to be moving most of these people into like you might have to go early for your narrows. You're going to go early first, but ultimately you're trying to bring them back into a middle representation where they're going to produce more force. And then you're trying to give them the relative motion to get into the most advantageous position to produce force, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're going to be moving people towards middle representations as you start to align them into an internally rotated representation from proximal to distal. Mm-hmm. So this is side stuff, right? Like if you were in the lower extremity, like you mentioned, like a split stance or a half kneeling representation, because that's an IR representation, right?
Right. So would like an oblique sit do the same thing?
Yeah. So we do oblique sit variations a lot of the times because those are middle representations, and then I can work proximal to distal on those. And then depending on whether I'm high or low, then I can influence which segment I'm emphasizing, right? Mm-hmm. So that should get your brain started in the right direction.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Cool.
Great. Yes. Thank you.
Awesome.